Hey everyone, and welcome back to Podcast Name. I'm your host, Mia, and it's so good to have you with us today. Today we're diving into something super specific, but also, universally useful. We're talking about the absolute art of introducing yourself naturally in English. And I've got the perfect person to chat with about this. He's an expert in, making connections and communicating effectively. Welcome, Lucas.
Thanks for having me, Mia. Happy to be here.
So glad you could make it. When we talk about introducing ourselves, it feels like it should be so simple, right? Like, hi, I'm X. But then it can feel surprisingly tricky, can't it?
It absolutely can. Especially when you're learning a new language, or even just in a situation where you don't know anyone. It's that moment of stepping out into the unknown.
Yeah, it really is. And for our listeners, we're really focusing on how to do this without sounding like you're reading from a script or, like you're in a classroom. We want it to be genuinely natural. So, Lucas, let's just dive right in. Okay, so let's start with a classic scenario. You walk into a room, maybe a networking event, a party, or even just a coffee shop, and you need to meet someone new. What's the very first thing someone should be thinking about before they even open their mouth?
I'd say the first thing is to have a positive mindset, really. It's about approaching it with curiosity, not fear. Think of it as an opportunity to learn something new about another person, rather than a test you have to pass.
That's a great way to frame it. So, less pressure on yourself? Okay, so positive mindset, curiosity. Then, the actual words. What's a really simple way to initiate that first contact?
Well, for English learners, the absolute simplest is often the best. So you can just go with, hi, I'm your name. Or, if you want to be slightly more formal, hello, my name is your name.
Right, straightforward. But how do you make that feel less like you're just stating your name into the void? Like, how do you get that initial nice to meet you from the other person?
That often comes from your tone. And a warm smile. And then immediately follow up with a simple question. Something like, is this seat taken? If you're looking for a place to sit. Or, are you here for the event name? If it's an event.
Oh, so it's not just saying your name, it's about adding a little context or a question to invite a response. That makes so much sense. So if I say, hi, I'm Mia, and then, is this seat taken? That invites them to say, no, it's free, and then, I'm Daniel, by the way.
Exactly. You've just initiated a small interaction. And they've responded with their name and a piece of information. So now you have something to build on.
Okay, gotcha. So the ball is in their court to respond. And then, how do you keep that momentum going? What's the next natural step after the initial name exchange?
After you've exchanged names, a good follow-up is to ask about their connection to the situation. So if you're at an event, you could ask, is this your first time at this conference, or how do you know the hosts?
So you're trying to find common ground, basically. And that helps you understand their role in the situation. I like that. What if you're not at a specific event, though? Like, what if it's just a casual meetup at a cafe or something?
In a more casual setting, you can ask about their experience with the place. So if you're at a cafe, you could say, this is my first time here. Have you been before? Or, do you know if they have good pastries?
That's a nice low-pressure way to start. Do you know if they have good pastries? I could totally picture myself saying that. So it's about asking questions that are relevant to the immediate environment.
Precisely. It's about observing your surroundings and using them as conversation starters. It shows you're engaged with the moment, and you're open to talking. And it's a way to gauge their openness, too.
It feels less like an interrogation and more like, a shared discovery. Okay, so we've got the initial greeting, name exchange, and a relevant question. What about when the other person asks you a question back? Like, where are you from? Or what do you do?
This is where a lot of learners can get a bit stuck. The key here is to give a concise answer and then, crucially, turn the question back to them. It keeps the conversation balanced.
Turning the question back. So if they ask, where are you from? Instead of just saying, I'm from X, you add a bit more.
Exactly. So you could say, I'm from a small town outside of Chicago. It's quite peaceful there. How about you? Where are you originally from?
Oh, I see. So you give a little detail, just a tiny bit, and then you immediately hand the baton back. How about you? That's a great phrase. And for What do you do?
For what do you do? You could say, I work in marketing. It's pretty interesting. Lots of creative projects. And what about you? What field are you in?
So it's that reciprocal element. You don't want to be the only one giving information, and you don't want to be the only one asking questions. It's a dance. And what if you don't have a super exciting job to talk about?
Honestly, most people are more interested in the person than the job title. You can always add a personal touch. If you work in, say, accounting, you could say, I'm in accounting. It keeps me organized, and it pays the bills. What about you? What do you find engaging about your work?
Wow, that's really smart. Focusing on the asterisk aspect of the job you find interesting, even if the job itself isn't, like, world-changing. That takes the pressure off. So after names and jobs, what's the next natural topic to explore to keep the conversation flowing?
Hobbies and interests are always a safe and engaging bet. People love to talk about what they enjoy doing in their free time. So after the initial introductions, you can ask, so outside of work, what do you enjoy doing?
Yeah, that's a classic for a reason. It opens up so many possibilities. But sometimes people might give a very short answer, like, oh, nothing much. How do you respond to that without letting the conversation die?
That's a common one. If they say nothing much, you can gently probe a little further. You could say, oh, really? I find it hard to believe. Everyone has something they like to do, even if it's just relaxing. What's your favorite way to unwind?
Oh, that's a good one. Favorite way to unwind. That's a gentler way of asking about hobbies, isn't it? It acknowledges that sometimes unwinding is the activity. I like that.
Exactly. Or you can share something about yourself first to encourage them. I love going for walks in nature. It's so refreshing. Do you have any outdoor activities you enjoy?
That's a really warm approach. You're sharing something personal and then inviting them to share it. It feels more collaborative. So let's recap this first part. We've talked about having a positive mindset, using simple greetings, asking relevant initial questions, giving concise answers and turning questions back, and then moving into hobbies. That's a solid foundation.
It really is. The core idea is to be genuinely interested in the other person and to make it easy for them to respond. And remembering that it's a two-way street. Let's bookmark that and continue after a break.
Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, Lucas and I were chatting about the initial steps of introducing yourself in English, starting with greetings and moving into jobs and hobbies. Now, let's dig a little deeper into how to extend those conversations and make them more memorable. So we've covered the basics of finding common ground. What happens when you discover a shared interest? Like, say you both love movies, or hiking, or a specific type of food. How do you really deepen that part of the conversation?
Once you find a shared interest, that's your golden ticket. Don't just say, oh, I like movies too. Ask a specific question related to that interest. For example, if they mention liking movies, you could ask, oh, cool, what kind of movies are you into? Are you more of a sci-fi person, or do you prefer dramas?
Right. Specificity is key. So instead of a broad, I like movies, you get into genres, and that gives them more to talk about. What if they say something like, I just like good movies?
That's a common response. Then, you can use that as an opportunity to share a recent experience or a recommendation. You could say, I just saw this film called Movie Title. It was fantastic. Have you seen it? Or, what's the last great movie you saw?
So you're creating an open-ended question that requires more than a yes or no. And you're also subtly sharing your taste. I like that you mentioned a specific movie title that gives them something concrete to respond to.
Exactly. It gives them a hook. And if they haven't seen it, they might ask you for more details. Or if they have, you can discuss it. It's about creating a mini discussion around that shared interest. Think of it like building a small bridge of conversation.
A bridge of conversation. I like that metaphor. It's not just a statement. It's an invitation to connect on that specific topic. So for English learners, are there any phrases that are particularly helpful for expressing enthusiasm for a shared interest?
Definitely. You can use phrases like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Or, no way, I love that too. Or, you're kidding, that's one of my favorite things. These express genuine surprise and connection.
Those sound so natural. No way. I love that too. That's something I definitely say. And how do you transition away from a shared interest or bring the conversation to a close gracefully?
Transitions are important. You can signal a shift by saying something like, "That's really interesting. Speaking of, related but different topic." Or, on a different note, "Have you ever been to place?"
So you create a clear bridge to a new topic, and if it's time to wrap up, like you need to leave?
For wrapping up, you can use phrases like, "Well, it's been great talking to you, but I actually need to reason, e.g., meet someone, head to my next appointment," or, "I've really enjoyed this chat, but I should probably get going."
And you should always add a forward-looking statement, right? Like, hope to see you around, or maybe we can chat again sometime.
Absolutely. Adding something like, "It was really nice meeting you, name," or "Hope you have a good rest of your day." It leaves a positive final impression.
That's so important, leaving on a good note. So let's tie this back to the core idea of introducing yourself naturally. What about when you're meeting someone for the first time in a professional context, like a job interview or a networking event? Does the approach change?
The core principles remain the same. Be polite, be curious, be yourself. But the content of your introduction might be more focused. Instead of asking about pastries, you might ask about their role in the company or their experience in the industry.
Right, so you tailor the questions and the details you share to the context. For instance, if you're at a conference for graphic designers, you'd focus on design trends or software, not what you had for breakfast.
Precisely, you'd want to highlight relevant skills or interests. So, if you're asked, "Tell me about yourself," for a job interview, you wouldn't just say, "I'm Mia, I'm funny." You'd say, "I'm Mia, a graphic designer with 5 years of experience in branding and digital design. I'm passionate about creating visually compelling stories for brands, and I'm particularly drawn to this company's innovative approach to specific aspect."
Oh, wow. That's a perfect example of adapting the introduction for a professional setting. It's still natural, but it's focused and relevant. And the phrase "passionate about creating visually compelling stories" sounds so much more engaging than just "I like design."
It is. It shows your enthusiasm and your understanding of what you bring to the table. For English learners, practicing these tailored introductions is really helpful. You can even write them out and rehearse them, but deliver them with a natural conversational tone.
Rehearsal is key, and for those moments when you're really struggling for words. What's a good go-to phrase to buy yourself a second?
A classic is, let me think for a second. Or, "That's a good question. How to put this?" You can also say, "Well, I'm still exploring that myself, but..." This gives you a moment and also makes you seem thoughtful.
I love how to put this. It sounds so sophisticated. And it actually gives you permission to pause and formulate your thoughts. So we've covered quite a bit, from the initial greeting to navigating deeper conversations and even professional introductions.
Indeed. The overarching principle is to be authentic, observant, and to actively engage. Don't be afraid to make small talk. It's the stepping stone to more meaningful connections. And always remember to listen as much as you speak.
Authentic, observant, engage, listen. That's a fantastic summary. So for this topic, the key takeaway is introductions are not just about stating facts. They're about starting connections.
Precisely. They're an invitation to get to know someone, and a chance for them to get to know you. So make that invitation warm and genuine. Let's pause and resume shortly.
Welcome back to the final segment of our chat. We've talked about the building blocks of introductions and how to expand on them. Now, Lucas, let's talk about common pitfalls and maybe some advanced tips for really mastering this. What are some common mistakes English learners make when trying to introduce themselves that we should watch out for?
One big one is over-apologizing. For example, saying, "Sorry, my English is not very good." This is often unnecessary and can undermine your confidence before you've even started. Most people are very understanding.
Oh, I can see that. It's like, You're preemptively excusing yourself, and that's probably not the best first impression. What else?
Another is trying to use overly complex vocabulary or sentence structures. They might have learned some fancy phrases, but they come out sounding unnatural or stiff. It's better to use simpler, correct language that flows easily.
Yeah, I think we covered that earlier. Simpler is often better. What about, not asking enough questions? Just, talking about yourself too much?
That's definitely a pitfall. Monopolizing the conversation. People might feel like you're not interested in them. Remember, a conversation is a dialogue, not a monologue. Always circle back to the other person.
Monologue versus dialogue. That's a great way to put it. And you've mentioned listening. How important is active listening in this whole process?
Active listening is crucial. It's not just about hearing the words. It's about understanding the meaning and responding appropriately. When you actively listen, you'll pick up on cues that allow you to ask better follow-up questions and show you're genuinely engaged.
Mm-hmm. So even if you're nervous about speaking, focusing on really listening can help guide you. And like you mentioned, using your surroundings earlier, are there any other subtle ways to make an introduction feel more personal?
One subtle way is to remember details they shared earlier and refer back to them. If they mention they love dogs, and later you see a dog, you can say, "Oh, that reminds me, you mentioned you have a dog. What breed is it?" It shows you were paying attention.
Oh, that's brilliant. Like a little callback. It makes the other person feel seen and heard, doesn't it? And it builds on the connection you've already made.
Exactly. It's those little touches that elevate a basic introduction into a real interaction. Another advanced tip is to be able to pivot gracefully. If a topic isn't landing, or the other person seems uninterested, you can smoothly change gears.
Pivot gracefully. How do you do that? Like if you're talking about classic cars and the other person's eyes glaze over.
You can use a linking phrase to transition. You might say, speaking of things that are a bit out of the ordinary, have you heard about? Completely different, but perhaps relevant to the broader context. Or even just, anyway, shifting gears a bit, what are your thoughts on new topic?
That's a great way to do it. Shifting gears a bit. It acknowledges the change without being awkward. And it gives you a chance to steer the conversation to something more engaging for both of you.
Right. It's about being adaptable. Also, don't be afraid to use humor, if it's appropriate. A lighthearted, self-deprecating joke can break the ice beautifully. But know your audience and the context.
Self-deprecating humor. That's a brave move. But when it lands, it's golden. So if you're in a casual setting, maybe you could say something like, "I'm still trying to get the hang of ordering coffee in English." Sometimes I end up with something completely unexpected.
That's perfect. It's relatable, shows a bit of vulnerability, and invites a response. It shows you don't take yourself too seriously. And for English learners, that's a really valuable trait to project.
Yeah, it makes you more approachable. So we've talked about avoiding over-apologizing, using clear language, not monopolizing, active listening, making personal connections, pivoting, and using humor. That's a lot of great advice for making introductions feel natural and effective.
It really is. The goal is to move from a hesitant introduction to a comfortable, flowing conversation. It takes practice, but by focusing on these elements, anyone can improve. You just need to put yourself out there.
And remember, the reason we're having this conversation is to help our listeners feel more confident. So the ultimate goal isn't perfect grammar, it's genuine connection. So, Lucas, to wrap up, what's the single most important piece of advice you'd give someone learning to introduce themselves in English?
Be curious. Be genuinely curious about the other person. Ask questions, listen intently, and let that curiosity guide the conversation. That's the engine that drives natural introductions and conversations.
Be curious. That's a fantastic takeaway. It shifts the focus from your own anxiety to the opportunity of learning about someone else. Lucas, this has been incredibly insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
My pleasure, Mia. Always happy to talk about making connections.
And thank you to all our listeners for tuning into Podcast Name. We hope this episode gives you the confidence to strike up conversations. Wherever you are, remember, practice makes perfect, but genuine interest makes it enjoyable. That wraps today's episode. Thanks for listening.